Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome COO and partner Noma and Overture Holdings, Ben Liebmann, and co-founder and COO VizEat, Camille Rumani, in discussion with editor Skift Greg Oates.
So someone asked me what were the two most innovative brands in culinary travel today. I don't think it would be an exaggeration to say the two people I have up here with me today. Vizit, based in Paris, and Noma, based in Copenhagen. Is everyone here familiar with Noma? I'm assuming yes. Everyone, okay, I'm just going to go with that. What about Vizit? Who here knows Vizit? Hands. Okay, so that gives us sort of an idea what we're looking at here. So just starting with Noma, as most of you know, in 2010 it was voted world's best restaurant by San Pellegrino, world's best restaurants. Then again 2011, 2012. I guess things faltered a year in 2013, didn't work out. But then again 2014, world's best restaurant. We're going to talk about that. And then Vizit is really, I think, sort of the next big vertical in the sharing economy. We have Airbnb and the rest in lodging, Uber and Lyft in automotive or transportation, and now food. I remember at Airbnb opened a couple years ago, you hooked up 2,000 conference attendees with local households for people to have meals, talk about an immersive experience. So anyway, starting with you, Ben, the question that always comes to mind is, what is it about Chef René Redzepi's culinary vision that is so singular, that has elevated this restaurant to the level it is?
Well, I think the restaurant opened 14 years ago. The world of food, the world of dining was very different then. I think it's interesting looking back on some of the things that they introduced at the time. They're now so commonplace, but at the time they were quite revolutionary. One was, this focus on deliciousness and flavor and unlocking a region and its local ingredients and its local cuisine that perhaps the world hadn't seen. I think there was also a focus on hospitality that, again, fine dining restaurants had not traditionally kind of brought to the market. Noma is not a temple of food with hushed diners eating in hushed silence with white tablecloths. It's a really warm room and a warm experience where people are often eating dishes with their hands and there's laughter and conviviality. And I think that sense of hospitality and also an interaction with the kitchen. It was one of the first restaurants where René and his team were stepping into the dining room to interact with the diners, to bring them the dishes and talk about it. All of these things back then were completely revolutionary. Ultimately, I guess, driven by a sense of a desire to learn and exploration. Really, they're the two things that really drive René and continue to do so today.
I think, too, I remember when first hearing that Noma had won, all of a sudden Nordic cuisine was a thing.
Yeah.
We'd never really thought of Denmark as a food capital, and then Sweden picked up on that even more so. And suddenly the media, that's all you read about was these sort of new food experiences, new food destinations, which really tapped into what I think makes it innovative. We'll come back to that in a little bit. In terms of Vizit, I kind of described it. Do you want to sort of give an overview and just talk about how you've been successful at scaling this? Because, going to someone's house to share a meal isn't especially new, but you've just been able to sort of build this platform that makes it a lot easier for more people to do it.
Exactly. The challenge is definitely to scale. And to scale the community of the hosts, we have right now more than 22,000 hosts in plus 100 countries across the globe. And the focus right now is mainly on Europe in terms of hosts. And scaling, I would say that the word of mouth was very important in the very beginning, and the vetting process of the community is super important. And once you have the right, I would say, first hosts, then it helps you to exactly know what also the travelers are looking for, and you know where to grow and what kind of experiences you can add, because originally it was mainly dinners, and now we opened up a bit to cooking classes, market tours, and other kind of immersive food experiences. And then word of mouth and of course marketing as well has been very, very helpful to scale, and we really make sure that even if we scale, the quality remains the same, and the experience that the guests will have will still be the highlight of their trip. It's very important for us.
How many cities are you working in?
So many cities. I say like 100 countries, and I don't know exactly how many cities, maybe I don't know, 300 or something like this.
Will this eventually become as mainstream, or could it potentially become as mainstream as a Airbnb or Uber?
Definitely. What is super interesting when we started would be very B2 or C2C, like typical sharing economy model. But what we've seen right now is that the interest from the traditional actors of the tourism industry is absolutely amazing. And we work a lot with OTAs, with hotels, with tour operators, and we will announce very famous names in the coming days. And so it's not only C2C, it's a lot B2B2C right now. And so it's becoming more and more mainstream. And all the tourism industry know that people are looking for conviviality, as you said, and authenticity and immersive experiences. We've been discussing this since this morning. Like, immersive experience is definitely the thing right now.
Okay. Back to Noma. So you're launching a pop-up in Tulum, April 12th, right? The restaurant in Copenhagen has been closed down, and I believe you're reopening another one in Christiana. It's going to become an urban farm, so relocating away from the harbor. It's pretty incredible. So 5,000 seats or so for the 7-week period starting April 12th. On December 6th, those seats sold out in 3 hours online. Last year you were in Sydney, 56 or 100 or something like that, and it sold out in 3 minutes. So you're creating this $600 per head this time, until $340 per head plus tax and tip. So people are paying these huge, they're just, obviously there's a lot of demand for this. I think you have 27,000 on the waiting list for Tulum. Why? What is the motivation for an
It's the most overused word in TV, but it's the journey. Is that, there are people who want to follow the experience of Renee and 60 other chefs. I mean, there's a team of 90 people coming from Copenhagen to undertake this experience. And we've got, these 5,500 guests who are traveling from all around the world to share in that experience, and to I guess, see and experience a country through the eyes and the hands of a Danish restaurant or a Danish chef, to I guess, learn through what he has experienced over. In the case of Mexico, he's been going back and forth for the last 8 years, but over the last 12 months, they've probably spent 4 to 5 months traveling the country, looking for ingredients, for techniques, talking with grandmothers and producers and farmers and some of the best chefs in Mexico, really trying to unlock what makes this country as extraordinary as it is. And these guests are coming to be a part of that.
But whose journey? It's not just the ownership of Noma, but also the employees. This is the idea of building the culture, the company, and almost like rewarding everyone or to hold it together.
The first pop-up was Tokyo, was in 2015. And Renee was talking with his business partner, the founding partner of Overture, and said, I'm thinking of taking 2 to 3 months off. I want to go to Tokyo and just immerse myself in the culture and learn about it. And Mark said, well, why don't you take everyone? And that was where it came from. It wasn't driven as a commercial exercise. For the people who know us and the people who see the way that we do things, we are a business. But we would do them very differently if they were driven by a commercial outcome. They're driven by, a pursuit of and a joy of knowledge, and that's what Mexico is about. And yes, it is also about building a culture and a community within the restaurant, and then a community of the guests that dine with us.
So these are both very immersive experiences in different ways. Camille, could you talk about sort of changing guest behaviors, changing guest expectations in terms of more people are accepting that this is something that they wish to do, to go to someone else's house. It's one thing to, go to an Airbnb. It can be something that's anonymous if they want it, or an Uber, whatever. But sitting down and actually engaging with a family is a completely different experience. Do you see that there's a changing behavior there and expectation?
Completely. When we're looking for a new market, to open a new market, we always do market research. And for example, we are launching the Chinese app in 2 weeks on the iOS first, on the App Store. And we did a lot of research on what are the expectations, for example, of the Chinese travelers when they're traveling to Europe. And we found out that there are 86% of Chinese travelers would like to book a meal at locals' home while they're traveling, and while they're traveling abroad mainly. And one of the reasons was they want to know how people live, what is behind the doors, behind the windows, how it looks, and they want to meet people. And so I would say that food sometimes is the excuse and of the journey that you want to have, of the whole experience. And it's not only about sharing, it's not sharing a meal, but it's sharing the culture, sharing ideas, and people are really looking for that nowadays. We see this, and it's a very key ingredient in their travel nowadays. They want to have that the highlights and to have this very immersive experience.
So what are the challenges to grow this worldwide and scale this and get, just keep expanding the brand?
It's always a chicken and egg problem on the two-sided platform. So it's grow the community in key cities. For example, we have in specific cities where we have like a few hosts, like 20 hosts, we have more and more demand from partners, for example. So we have to grow the community there and maintain the quality, as I said, and the uniqueness of the experience. And it's also right now a challenge to as you said, change the habits and make people travel a different way. Change the way people travel, one food experience at a time. Make sure that they do this, they have a great first experience, and then they will do it again. And right now we can already follow our guests throughout their different visit experiences when they're traveling in Europe and then to Asia. And it's a challenge, but the key, I think, it's the first experience they had. It's super important.
Interesting. So Ben, let's talk about how food tourism can sort of pivot a destination brand. And it's interesting because we've done a lot of work with both Australia and Mexico. Australia being mature in the process of how they use food tourism, the whole Restaurant Australia campaign. They wanted to sort of pivot the brand to be more upscale. They wanted to drive higher average spend. They realized that they had this amazing food and wine product that people didn't really understand until they'd been there. So what did the pop-up do for Sydney, or could you just talk about how you worked with the destination to sort of both communicate what you wanted to communicate and help them achieve their goals?
Yeah, I mean, the decision to go to Sydney was, well, the decision to go to Australia was certainly ours. Much like Tokyo and Australia and Mexico, it was very much a decision of these are the countries we wanted to travel, these are the countries we want to explore. And then we set about trying to piece that thing together. It's quite an undertaking to, move an entire restaurant with families, children that have to be put up in schools, grandmothers who come along, and to give these people a life and a livelihood in another side of the world, and then try and build a restaurant. We were very fortunate in Australia to have the support of Tourism Australia and Lend-Lease, a big property developer. But you're right, for the Australian government, it was the second year of the Restaurant Australia kind of program. I think year one was invite the world to dinner. Year 3 is in 24 hours with the 50 best. And they did want, to elevate, I guess, the awareness of Australia as a food destination. Their research was showing that travellers internationally, but increasingly in Australia, were selecting destinations based upon the food offerings, whether it be restaurants at the various levels or access to fresh produce. In particular, they were seeing that out of Asia as well, in terms of a lot of the inbound traffic. And it was just a perfect timing. It really was. It was a phone call and an email to Tourism Australia to say, we've got a crazy idea, we're thinking of coming to Australia, do you want to help us do it?
What do you think this is going to do for Tulum?
I hope it does the same thing. 95% of our guests are coming from outside of Mexico. One of the things that we found in Australia, and I think will happen with Mexico as well, is they use, I guess, our home base, Sydney and Tulum, as a jump-off point. So our guests were coming in to dine at Noma, that was their reason for coming, and then they were using that as an opportunity to explore the city. Certainly in the case of Australia, given how far many of them had travelled, they were using it as a way to travel and explore the rest of the country. And I think that will happen with Mexico as well. Tulum is such a small town that I think what we'll see is a large number of our guests will be using it as a reason to come to Mexico, and either on this journey or in future journeys will explore some of the other parts of the country, whether it be the places that we explored on our research trips or just other parts as, as part of their travel research.
So, and Sydney got mad press after it happened. Earned, paid, all over the world. Tourism Australians paying $600,000 to host World's Best in Melbourne because they've seen what it does for the brand. In Mexico, not as sophisticated as a marketing entity that's running the country. Do you work with them, or do you help them say, here's how we can get this message out and we want to use your channels? Is that collaboration, that conversation taking place?
We've been talking to the government at various levels, federal, state, local, for over 12 months. They are in the beginning of their journey of promoting Mexico as a food destination. It's probably one that they started about a year ago as well, again with the 50 best, in terms of the Latin America's 50 best. But you're right, they're at an earlier stage. They've been extremely supportive of the project. They're not a partner in the same way that Tourism Australia was. The federal government is not. But they've been extremely supportive of it, opened the doors when we needed them, provided the moral support that we needed. It's an undertaking to build a restaurant in the jungle, which it is, and they've been a great supporter.
Okay. And Camille, just last question, and then Rafat has some questions. How do you work with destinations? Is that something that is, a conscious thing that needs to be addressed? How, when you go into new cities and work with the local tourism board, and is there any other things we should look at?
We're definitely working with destinations. We are a partner with London Partners, and we are also a member of the Paris Tourism Office. And for us, it's definitely the way to go. We will partner very soon with the Catalonia office as well. And for them, it's also a way to promote the city and the country as a food destination, obviously, and also to show different aspects of the tourism and also the innovation. And they find out that, for example, Paris very often includes a visit experience during press trip and our blogger or influencer trip to Paris, for example. And they go to a Michelin star restaurant, and the day after they have a visit dinner, very convivial and authentic. And for them, it's not changing the way people travel, because it's going to take only 2 or 3 hours during your trip, but you will really remember it. And they have the feeling that, for example, the destinations, you're traveling in Paris, there are millions of people living there, but you don't actually meet any Parisians. Or it's very difficult to meet Londoners. So the idea is really, to create that moment of conviviality and exchanges. So it's a completely different asset that they can showcase as well, and it's important for them, and for us it's also important to be here to represent also the know-how of all the amateurs hosts who cook at their place.
Excellent.
Yeah, so with the title of the panel, Dining Out is the New Rock and Roll, it's a thing that we've embraced really in many ways. As I mentioned earlier, that we're expanding into the business of dining out. That's why you're here as part of our expansion. You're actually the first food panelist to the Skift Global Forum since we started, so we're happy about that. In many ways, we think that the restaurants are leading hospitality now, just over the last 5 years, if you will. Hotels have, over the last 5 or 6 years, become renewed interest in food in general as a driver. What do you think they're missing from your perspective on understanding how food has become the center of people's lives while they're living daily, as well as travel as well? And so Noma's experience and Vizit's experience, how do you what do you think travel industry is missing?
Go ahead.
After you.
No, I think we really, when we started with Jean-Michel 3.5 years ago, we really see the change now. It was a very innovative way of traveling. It was maybe more pioneers, at the beginning. And the fact that we have a very, very big community, it's helped us, to provide a wide range of experiences, from casual dinner around like 15 euros or wine and cheese to very high-end experiences. And I think when we were saying the new rock and roll, it's also the ability, you know, that everyone can find an experience that will suit you and that will whet your appetite. And of course, we're very attentive to the hospitality, but I think when you do this, when you welcome people at your place, you do this, you cook for them, you go buy all the groceries, and it's something that comes from your heart also. It's something that we're really careful with.
I don't necessarily think the industry's missing a trick in terms of its focus on food. But I think, you know, perhaps I think there is more to be done when you know, you do see the research that says that people are selecting their destinations of travel based on food, or they are selecting the destination and before they pick their hotel, they're trying to book the restaurants. I think there's huge opportunities there. There was a piece of research. What kind of interested me in making the transition from my career in media into hospitality was there was a piece of research about 2 years ago that I think CAA had commissioned, which said that, you know, for that mythical demographic, the millennials, that they were now viewing food, what they ate and where they ate it, as important as as important to define their character of who they are, as the clothes they wore, the sporting team they followed, and the music that they listened to. Now, you think 10 years ago, if you had said to a 16 to 29-year-old, how important to you is food or chefs or restaurants, and they probably would have laughed at you. And so I think we are seeing something that is a fundamental shift in people's viewing of food and dining. It's not a seasonal thing anymore, and it's not just a blip. I think it's here to stay. So, you know, I'd encourage everybody within the industry to kind of double down on, you know, how and, you know, the ways in which they interact with this sector, whether it be, you know, food offerings in hotels, and obviously that's starting to pick up in terms of, again, you know, improved offerings, or the way they just engage with the broader hospitality sector.
Great. All right, well, thank you both, Ben and Camille, for joining us. It was a pleasure. Please give them a hand.
Thank you.